Hi, I'm Bill Shee from Latin American Masters Gallery in Santa Monica, California. And I'd like to talk to you about the great Mexican artist Francisco Toledo. And let's look specifically at one of his works. Toledo was a great printmaker. And in fact, even though he worked in all media, he was a great painter, he was a great sculptor. He made printmaking central to his practice of art making and made prints over a 60-year period. In fact, one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that Toledo, who was a protean creative force, he did over 9,000 different works of art that have been cataloged thus far. He was also a great collector of prints and donated a print museum to Mexico with over 70,000 works of art by other artists that he had collected over a lifetime. This includes, in its totality, one of the great print collections in Latin America, if not in the entire world. So he was very serious about it. The piece that we're looking at, the Octopus with the slave ship, was a piece that Toledo did in the months prior to his death in 2019. Toledo, it's a magnificent print. It's a lithograph done with water-resistant inks on a piece of stone. And let's talk first about the quality and feeling of the work before we talk about the imagery. The feeling of the work is very interesting. It has this sort of black, inky quality and this sense of wetness, of slipperiness even, that's really very appropriate to the subject matter. If you think about an octopus and the way they have that jet of ink that they can put out, and you think about the slippery quality that they have in their skin, Toledo's really captured that feeling in the work. He's done some other things that are interesting. The octopus's body is darkened, yet in order to make it really stand out graphically, he's flipped the tentacles to their underside, suggesting both the vulnerability of the octopus, which is kind of ironic because it looks like a sea monster, right? But he's also using it as a way of contrasting that light color of the underside with the darker background of the piece. So that's very interesting. Also, the perspective of the piece is very interesting. He's got this sort of overview, as if this sort of omniscient, godlike quality of the piece, as if you were looking down on it from up in the sky. Now let's talk about the imagery of the piece and what he's doing here. It's really interesting. Toledo, among other things, was famous for his zoology. He's arguably one of the, among other things, one of the greatest artists to ever work with iconography of animals coming from nature. And according to the piece that he was working with, the meaning of those animals would change. So, you know, in one piece, he might use the octopus for comical effect, and it might be trying to escape an aquarium with a hammer in its hand, you know. We know they're very intelligent animals, so he'd be interested in that quality, and he would sort of rhyme it with our own human desire not to be entrapped. And in another piece, he might use it as an image of corruption, of the demonic force, for instance, of the drug mafias in Mexico, and the way in which they had their tentacles around the system of corruption of the government. In this piece, what he's doing, which is really interesting, he's taking this idea of the octopus and he's rhyming it with that ancient idea of the sea monster. You know, that monster that comes from the deep below the surface. Notice the scale of the piece. He's got boats all around it, and if you look carefully, he's got slaves inside the boats. He's actually lopped off the tops of these boats so that you can see down into the hull of the boats, and you can see the way in which the humans are being stacked like wood below the surface. By putting the boats in there, he's turning what is in some way a fantastic image of the sea monster seen through the octopus into an allegory, a historical allegory about the sea monster itself, representing the monstrosity of racism and the dangers and violence of the passage from Africa to the New World. So Toledo has found a way to make a work of art which is focused on the animal, on the mythology of the sea monster, as it existed, by the way, both in Europe and in the Americas. He's used diagrams of actual slave ships that were made in England in the 18th century. And he's, by bringing this all together in this imagery, he's also able to comment and make a sort of historical allegory saying slavery existed, this is how they treated those people, and here's an image that I'm using of this giant animal slash monster as a way of showing how horrible and how vulnerable people were in this moment. He's really showing it to you visually as a visual idea. If you'd like to know more about Francisco Toledo's work, to see more of his work as a painter, printmaker, ceramicist, sculptor, please go to our website, www.latinamericanmasters.com, and we'll do our best to give you access to more of Toledo's work. Thank you so much.